The central tenet of pragmatism is that reality is based upon experience and interactions. These interactions include with others, nature, and/or things. Reality is therefore subject to change and is relative. In this model, truth is not absolute. Instead, it is determined by function or consequences. Furthermore, whatever works or leads to desirable consequences is ethically or morally good. This view goes beyond just focusing on self. Pragmatists are also concerned with social consequences. What works is what works for the larger community. This philosophy is based upon the biological science model of organic growth and change. In other words, the universe is dynamic and evolving. If the universe and reality are constantly changing, then only those things that are experienced or observed are real according to pragmatism. Essential to pragmatism is the concept of progress. Progress follows the idea that reality is an event, a process, and a verb.
Auguste Comte and Charles Darwin had a large impact at the formation of early pragmatic beliefs. Comte believed that science could solve social problems and was a key ingredient in the philosophy. Charles Darwin's theory of natural selection can be applied to education since it is open-ended and leaves space for change. Charles Sanders Peirce, William James, and John Dewey were the three most influential Americans to pragmatism. Peirce is credited with giving name to the theory of pragmatism. He believed that true knowledge depends on verification of ideas through experience. He put an emphasis on learning, believing, and knowing. James believed that there are no absolutes, no universals, and only an ever-changing universe. He believed that experience takes precedence over anything. Lastly, John Dewey was one of the greatest influences on pragmatism. He believed in a personally unified curriculum and a hands-on approach where students could interact with their environment to learn. He also believed that students and teachers should learn together, and that the focus should be on students, their needs, and creating environments to benefit them.
John Dewey is said to have had the greatest single impact on education to date, especially his influence with pragmatism. His goals weren't just to modify the education system internally, but to change the outlook society had on education holistically. Pragmatism is based off of Dewey's learner-centered education, or in current terms, a more progressive, constructivist way of teaching in the classroom. Most of Dewey and James' teachings and wisdom stemmed from Darwinism, as they believed education was an evolving strategy that both learners and teachers needed to invest in to achieve proper growth. He wanted education to break away from the church and the ideas of absolute truth, and in turn have a more secular education system allowing students to evolve as society does. With that being said, Dewey believed that it was up to the individual to choose to learn and apply their knowledge in order to be successful. Teachers were needed simply for guidance, but it was up to the students to use their brains and apply their knowledge themselves. These ideas changed education by making learning much more relevant for students, allowed more freedom of thinking, and allowed for much more applied learning. Breaking away from the church and viewing learning as a student's responsibility were big changes during this era, and ones that our society still greatly practices to date.
Students are encouraged in classrooms that model pragmatism to use the idea of relative truths in order to solve problems within and outside of the classroom. What you believe to be true now is completely dependent on the knowledge that you possess at the moment. Pragmatism can be fostered in the classroom by using hands-on and minds-on experiences and through experimentation. Through experimentation, students can uncover misconceptions that may have led them astray in the past and continue on with the new relative truth. In including hands-on experimentation in the classroom, the teacher is providing all of the students an experience to learn something new, and when some students might not have had that opportunity on their own. Students can be encouraged to practice pragmatism behaviorally. By teaching empathy and encouraging students to hear both sides of the argument, students are learning that their own truths are relative to the information that they possess, much like in the academic world.